Stop making us read. That's the feeling every single time the action stops and the homework kicks off. The fundamental truth of modern gaming is this: lore shouldn't be a mandatory book report. It should be a lived experience. The time of simple word counts is over. In this video, I'm dissecting the 3 radical approaches changing world building and games you love to play forever. I'll dive in to the explicit volume of Gearbox, which aims to give you every single detail. The fragmented tapestry of FromSoft, which makes you work for every single secret. And the emergent immersion of Rockstar, which uses 500,000 lines of ambient dialogue to make the world itself the main character. Making sure you stick around to the end when I crown that one studio that's found that perfect sweet spot of giving world building without forcing you to read books worth of texts. The entire original Mass Effect trilogy contains approximately 1.2 million words of lore and dialogue. If you think of it this way, this is more words than J.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings trilogy and Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace combined. If you haven't read these books, it's a lot, and I mean a lot. This has been the tradition for games for generations at this point. Read it, study it, and uncover it, rather than experience it. Recently, there's some companies that take a totally different approach to world building and setting out lore set pieces. FromSoft really builds games for mature audiences and goes 100% in. Most gamers will know FromSoft from Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Elden Ring. Their games are defined by high difficulty, tightly tuned combat, environmental storytelling, and emergent discovery through player exploration. FromSoft's approach to world building in Elden Ring stands in stark contrast to the explicit methods of Gearbox that I'll talk a little later about. The studio's commitment is to an implicit, fragmented, and interpretive narrative that is absolutely not meant to be fully understood by a single player in a single playthrough. A key pragmatic statistic of this approach is the intentional lack of a single, coherent narrative text. There is no official, comprehensive lore bible or an in-game codex that summarizes the entire story. The primary vehicle for lore delivery is short, often cryptic, texts found in item descriptions. This stands as a powerful statement. The studio values density and ambiguity over direct exposition. The player needs to do the work. Their design style is minimalist in exposition, but maximalist in interlocking systems and player agency. They want to design intensive challenges, tight responsiveness, and reward meaningful discovery. The impact of this is that their failures or constraints include polarizing difficulty for some audiences and a focus on solitary, exploratory play that sometimes resists conventional live service hooks. The developer Hidetaka Miyazaki has famously stated that some lore exists only in his head and is not given at all in the game. This philosophical position validates the fragmented approach and elevates the player to the role of an active archaeologist or detective. The community becomes an essential narrative tool. This is evidenced by the proliferation of massive fan-created resources such as full timeline of the Elden Ring universe that spans dozens of pages. The profound difficulty of summarizing the lore in a few words is a powerful dramatic statistic that underscores the complexity and depth of this interpretive model. In fact, Elden Ring had George R.R. Martin write the foundational backstory to the story of the game, but that was set 5,000 years before the time of the game, and he never wrote even a single line of dialogue or item descriptions. Apparently Miyazaki and the team changed and mutated a lot of Martin's characters to be more monstrous and less human, to elevate the otherworldly aspect of the game. Not much of this made it directly into the game and serves as a foundation for building out locations and implicit character work. If you like these kinds of deep dive lore, gore, or really intensive discussions around backstory in game design and deep dive lore, I'd really appreciate it if you could like or comment on these kinds of videos, or maybe even sub to the channel. It would really help with keeping me creating the videos that I love to create and hopefully you like to view. So, onto a very different kind of studio. Let's talk about Gearbox. If you take a complete 180 in storytelling style, you will come to Gearbox Software, and if you don't know of their evolution, they grew from modders and expansion teams into a full-on studio famous now for their Borderlands series. Their hallmark is hybrid FPS and loot systems, strong co-op focus, and a comic, edgy tone. Borderlands made procedural weapon loot a signature mechanic, and the series has sold tens of millions of copies across entries, establishing Gearbox as a seriously competent live co-op shooter studio. Gearbox Software's approach to world building with Borderlands franchise, at least, is defined by a singular, high volume and explicit commitment to the narrative arc. This is a universe where the story is told directly to the player through dialogue, cutscenes, and extensive in-game collectibles. A comprehensive overview of the core lore, which spans multiple games and downloadable content packs, takes nearly 2 hours to recount in a dedicated summary video. This length is a direct measure of the sheer amount of narrative content produced. These collectibles are primary vehicle for delivering backstory and developing the personalities of key characters, such as the antagonist Handsome Jack or side characters like Alistair Jacobs. The sheer number of these logs and the detail they contain demonstrate a considerable investment in explicit supplemental storytelling. Furthermore, Gearbox's commitment extends beyond the games themselves. The studio manages a deep portfolio of licensed and internally produced products, including comics, fictional novels, and other media. This multi-platform strategy signifies a commitment to building a narrative that exists far beyond the confines of the core game, offering dedicated fans countless avenues for engagement. However, the vast and sometimes convoluted nature of the lore can be challenging for players to follow. The fact that a popular Reddit thread asks for a simplified explanation of the lore because it is so scattered it's hard to follow indicates that a large investment in the narrative volume does not automatically guarantee clarity. The player's role in this model becomes one of a narrative curator, often needing to consult external fan-made resources to piece together a coherent timeline. Another crucial aspect of Gearbox's commitment is its public stance on an ethical world-building philosophy. This is a commitment not just to a narrative quality, but to a qualitative moral framework. The studio consciously seeks to create authentic reflections of humanity, subvert old stereotypes, and address underlying unconscious biases in its characters and worlds. This deliberate focus on inclusivity and social responsibility represents a significant, dramatic commitment that aims to foster a very positive relationship of trust with its players. Rockstar Games demonstrates a world-building commitment that's centered on creating an unparalleled sense of verisimilitude through staggering quantitative investment. Grand Theft Auto V features just under 160,000 lines of dialogue, a figure that was dwarfed by its successor, Red Dead Redemption 2, which contains over 500,000 lines. To contextualize this investment, The Witcher 3, a absolutely super game, if you've never played it, oh my god, what are you doing? Known for its narrative depth, contain around 70,000 lines of dialogue, and Skyrim approximately 60,000 lines. The sheer volume of dialogue in a Rockstar title is an order of magnitude larger than its closest competitors. This is not for the main narrative, but for the countless ambient conversations and interactions that populate the game world, creating an illusion of living, breathing reality. This massive investment creates a profound dramatic statistic, an unparalleled sense of immersion. The game's world becomes a character in itself, telling stories without the need for explicit dialogue or cutscenes. This is the essence of Rockstar's environmental storytelling, a core tenet of their design philosophy. Players can come across abandoned camps, bloodstains, makeshift memorials that hint at the struggles and stories of the people who once inhabited these spaces. The narrative is not just told, it's discovered through careful observation of the meticulously crafted environment. Grand Theft Auto originally planned to license over 900 tracks, before refining the final count to 241, and its successor, Grand Theft Auto V, included 441 licensed tracks across 16 radio stations. This is a massive investment that goes beyond simply providing a soundtrack. It enriches the cultural and historical authenticity of the world, fostering a very deep connection for the player. The commitment to world building for Rockstar is therefore a commitment to absolute realism, where every detail, from overheard conversations to the music on the radio, serves to reinforce the world's sense of place. While there are many different studio approaches to world building and delivering lore to the player, the most prevalent one seems to deliver lore in text format. In my opinion, it seems like a more cost-effective way to give foundational storytelling back to the player without the spend on developing even more gameplay for the work done. This is a visual medium, and the method has some merit in the kinds of games it's deployed in. I feel it's a little bit of a cop-out though. If you look at the games like Destiny 2, they have entire websites dedicated to the absolute wealth of lore, item history, and character backstory that is nowhere to be found in-game, and thus depriving the player of backstory and insight into behaviors. There are universes, monsters, and characters that have never made it into the game, that sometimes prove more interesting than the main story plot itself, the few times a year that you actually get original story in Destiny these days. But which one of these approaches is the best way of presenting lore and storytelling, and who should be crowned as the winner of the best lore approach?
Winner, winner, chicken dinner!
On the face of it, the clear winning approach is just not having all the reams of text to read in-game and thread into the characters and implied story of the bigger world. And yes, this is FromSoft. That studio's greatness lies not just in their games, but in how their design philosophy perfectly counters the core complaint that opened my video. Stop making us read. The fragmented tapestry model succeeds because it treats world building as a core mechanic, not an optional feature. By scattering lore across item descriptions and environmental details, they force the player to embody the role of a lore archaeologist. You don't read the history, you find it, you equip it, and you survive using the very objects that tell the tale. This transforms passive consumption into active discovery, the very goal of lived experience. The power of this model is in its efficiency and its ability to absorb the strengths of its competitors, while Rockstar's emergent immersion requires staggering volume, like 500,000 lines of dialogue? What? To create a sense of place. FromSoft achieves a comparable sense of deep, tragic story and narrative minimalism. The brevity and ambiguity of a cryptic item description force the player's imagination to fill in the gaps, which is often a more powerful and lasting form of immersion than being told every single detail. Furthermore, they effectively democratize the explicit volume approach of studios like Gearbox by delegating narrative synthesis to the community. In an age of constant connectivity, they create a shared, unsolved mystery that is collectively decoded. This turns the homework from a solitary task reading a static in-game codex into a social, interactive experience driven by player passion and the creation of fan-made resources. Ultimately, the best approach is a hybrid that understands the lesson of the fragmented tapestry. The game is no longer just the box you buy, but the vast decentralized community debating the fragments. By making lore a socially driven, mechanical reward instead of an in-game book report, FromSoft has solved the central challenge of modern game storytelling. They provide just enough contextual data to spark furious debate, rewarding deep play while maintaining mass appeal, proving that the future of lore is found in the hands of the player.
Wow, this has just been such a pleasure. I'm such a lucky boy. I can't wait to go home